So we're therapists, but we're also just two friends who overanalyze literally everything.
Think of us like your group chat, but with a psychology degree. Welcome to License to Yap podcast. Hello, everyone. My name is Mady Magadan, a first-generation Mexican-American woman, and now a licensed professional counselor in the state of Illinois.
And I'm Veronica Kajcik, a first-gen Polish-American woman, and obviously also a licensed professional counselor in Illinois. So now that the formalities are out of the way, I thought maybe we can go into a little bit of what we do, our specialties are, how we met, all that fun stuff.
Gosh, where to even start? My work, I'd say, consists primarily in women's issues, but it does extend to overall trauma work. So that looks like EMDR, somatic therapies, and internal family systems, which many of you may know as IFS or PARTS work.
I think we're definitely similar in a lot of ways in our work, and I think that's something that kind of just adds to our friendship, being able to relate to each other and the work that we do. But like Mady, I'm really passionate about women's issues and trauma as well. I do a lot of work with chronic illness and OCD. I actually come from a nursing background, and I worked on the medical side of things before switching over to the mental health world.
Well, I think we can spend some time really diving into how we met. I'd really say that we were blessed and fortunate to come from a smaller university, which made the program so much smaller. I mean, we really knew most of the individuals in our class. So our cohort was really helpful towards one another. We all knew one another just because of the classes that we had to take. So that is really how I got to know Veronica. I really just had a lot of classes with her, and I was really drawn to her energy. And I remember coming into, I want to say it was a weekend class where we really kind of clicked. It was one of Sherry Wick's classes, right? I think it was, where I really remember just being very drawn to her energy. It was really early in the morning, but we had really great conversations during that weekend class. And that, I think, is where we really, really clicked and where the friendship really blossomed. And since then, we've been friends now for about 2 years?
Something like that, yeah. And I have to say our friendship was definitely a slow burn, I think. You and I have talked about this before, but I think it definitely speaks to who we are as people. I've always been kind of that quiet girl in school, so I'm pretty introverted, and it takes me a while to get comfortable with people before kind of that extroverted, funner side of me comes out, if that makes sense. Where I feel like maybe you're naturally just a lot more extroverted than me. And I remember thinking, I think it was our first class together, addictions, I believe. And I think that was just an interesting class just altogether. And I remember thinking like, oh, I want to be her friend. But I'm always super awkward as an adult, I feel like, making friends. And I think just this period, just having to I don't know, making friendships as adults is a little different, right? You're kind of used to growing up with someone in school, kind of that forced proximity, right? So it's a little different as adults, at least for me it is. But we ended up having a lot more classes together and just naturally gravitated towards each other, I think.
Definitely. And I think going back to the aspect of the program being so small, it made becoming friends so much easier because we had to work on assignments together or we had to do presentations together. And so slowly but surely we got to know each other in a way that I think was more flowy than what it would have been naturally, because I was a little afraid to reach out as well, just because I thought, I did feel the introverted side of you, but I did feel like, oh, what if she doesn't want to be my friend? Or what if she's a little mean?
You can blame my resting bitch face for that.
Well, don't worry. I have one of those too. So maybe it was just, us just overthinking. But I think the program being small really helped, because I do agree making friends as an adult is very, very difficult. At least genuine friendships like we've made.
Yeah. And I think, too, our friendship kind of just works in a sense, too. And it definitely, grad school kind of, one, it started it, but I think it added to it. We ended up going to the same internship together. And after that, we got hired on at the same site as well. So it was really soothing, I feel like is a good word. having someone to go through all of these first experiences together, obviously first internship, seeing our first client, and then moving into graduating and starting our first jobs together. So I think that just definitely added almost like a layer of depth and just made our friendship a little bit more special in that way.
I couldn't agree more. I think the level of support I received from you, especially in such a scary, vulnerable time, being in grad school is really difficult. And I think that a lot of us don't get the credit for just how difficult it is. Especially because we both are first generation and we're the first women also in the family that are going for these professional careers that require a lot of hard work, a lot of continuing education. So I really didn't know what I was doing. All I knew was that I had a passion for psychology and that I wanted to help people. But I didn't really know where to start, how to do all these things. So naturally, I was the most afraid of the internship part because becoming someone's provider, someone's, helping hand, and really coming from a background of not knowing, no one reaching those kind of levels, it left me feeling very much like that imposter syndrome that most of us really talk about and that we experience. But it almost felt like these spaces weren't really fit for us, if that makes sense. So meeting you and meeting some other people in this program that have also very much blossomed into great friendships made me realize that we are the next generation, right? We're the generation that is going to be in these careers, and that it was so helpful to have that support of just all of us knowing we've been through a similar experience where we know the hardships, we know the barriers, we know the challenges that come with this, because this career is difficult. It is very difficult. It is time consuming and it can be draining at times, but very, very rewarding also. So I think our friendship really works because we bring each other so much support, so much patience, so much acceptance, where I really don't think I would have survived all of this if it weren't for you and having you in like my corner.
Yes, to all of that, all of it. And honestly, I think that's a big part of why we wanted to do this podcast, because so many of our conversations, whether, they were about burnout, relationships, our identity, sort of the more messier parts of life, they really happened outside of the classroom and outside of the therapeutic room. It was, more so our one-on-one chats, our drives, our meeting up for drinks. We would have hour-long conversations about a lot of these things.
Or more.
Yeah, or more. And we realized, maybe other people need to hear these conversations too, because yes, we're therapists, but we're also friends, we're daughters, partners, humans. And we wanted to show that therapists struggle too and share, how we navigate the same things that our clients do. So we kind of hoped something like this existed while we were in grad school or when we were burning out in our first job as well.
Right. And that's kind of where our first topic comes into play, which is talking about, quote unquote, the therapist friend. Because outside of sessions, we were already having these conversations with each other and honestly with our friends too, right? We likely were already being the person who was, taking the brunt end of things, listening to family members when they had crises, and just being the friend the go-to friend. So I think there's a lot to be said about the quote-unquote therapist friend.
Exactly. Like if you're listening, you probably already know who the therapist friend is in your group. And if you don't know, surprise, it's probably you.
Well, in lieu of what we're talking about, and as your therapist friend, Veronica, what would you want or envision this space to be?
I want this space to feel like you're sitting down with your friends who kind of happen to know a little bit of some psychology lingo, but also aren't afraid to admit when life gets messy. A place where you don't necessarily have to have it all, because neither do we.
Right. And I think definitely the words that come to mind for me is authentic and genuine. I think those are two characteristics that drew me and Veronica together and that we bring into the therapy world with our clients. So I would definitely say that this space wouldn't be us if authentic and genuine wasn't a part of it. I'd like this podcast to be, of course, about the field and all of the insight that comes with it, because it is incredibly important. But I'd also want it to be about honesty, humor, the ugly truths, because there are a lot. And of course, a sprinkle of healing, because that also wouldn't be us if there wasn't a sprinkle of healing.
And while we're on the topic of healing, I really think, kind of going back to we were talking about our friendship, I think our friendship and our journey to where we are now is really healing for me. Just being able to go through grad school, intern together, start at the same job together was really surreal. Having someone know what you're going through. I think grad school, we were both working full time as well. Seeing clients at our internship, I think, is a very original experience. It's very different, I feel like, than what a lot of people experience. I mean, I think it's pretty, I don't even know what the word is. It's complex.
Yeah.
Right. It's having to, worry about writing your 20-page papers, but then also making sure you're clocking in your work.
Right.
And how are you showing up for everything? A lot of times we probably weren't showing up as our best selves. And that's what we were talking to each other about. Like, how in the hell am I supposed to manage all of this?
Yeah. Like, how do we manage? How do we keep each other from spiraling? Right.
Yeah. And just having that person to, someone is understanding what I'm going through. I think, I've had, and I still have people in my life that, maybe didn't totally understand what grad school is like. And I actually just not that long ago, I had a conversation with my brother where I was telling him, like, I would go to class in the morning and then I would go to my internship until like 8 o'clock. And then I would come home and then I would work. Luckily, I was blessed to work remotely at that time, but I would be working till like 1, 2 in the morning sometimes.
Yeah. I remember when you told me your schedule, and I had this perspective shift where I was like, oh, I have it hard. But I mean, you're working till what, 1, 2 a.m. And I just would think to myself, like, how is she waking up and being so functional?
Let's just say I wasn't functioning very well.
Yeah. Well, now I can definitely see that.
Yeah, but definitely that was very healing for me. Just having someone, in my corner, knowing what I'm going through, someone that I could talk to, whether it's, complaining about this paper that we had to write or just complaining about how we're going to manage finances and papers and clients and progress notes.
And just everything.
Yeah.
For me, I really don't even know where to start on this topic. I have to say that we really balance each other out, and really in a way of like kind of how Veronica already spoke, right? About just bringing a sense of objectivity to me, because there is, not many people know, but there is definitely a level of impulsivity and indecisiveness within me. And she has always found a way to bring objectivity to my craziness, because I can and very much tend to spiral. And she spares room for me. And I think that's where that aspect of healing comes in. Because again, I didn't have anyone else in my family who wanted to pursue a career like this. And in fact, they kind of looked down upon it for quite some time. So it was very soothing to find someone else in a similar situation who could understand, who could support, and who could allow me to, sometimes spiral and just let me spiral, just hear me out, because it is difficult. And sometimes we just need to vent about how difficult that journey is, because that year definitely was, I gotta say, kicking my ass. That's the best thing that I could say. I remember crying multiple times and just telling my partner, I just can't do this. I can't do this anymore. It was very difficult, but having you and again, other of our colleagues or individuals from our class be of support was very helpful for me.
Yeah, honestly, I feel the same way. Having you alongside me through all those milestones made the challenges feel a little lighter. And honestly, I think that's what makes this friendship so special. We've seen each other in such messy, uncertain seasons. And instead of judgment, it's always been encouragement.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's, what we really want out of this podcast for our listeners too. Like, you've got people who are rooting for you while you figure things out. And that's the thing. That's what we've given each other, that sense of being seen and supported. And it's exactly what we want people to take away from listening.
Exactly. And I don't think there's anyone necessarily that we were intending to reach in terms of like a specific audience. We really just want listeners to feel like they can have a good laugh, or feel like they have a line of support, or even just those individuals who are therapy curious and just want to know a little bit more about the therapy world, or just other fellow yappers themselves, right? Because we really just need each other. At the end of the day, the idea was for this podcast to be an inviting, supportive, and comfortable place for everyone and anyone. So leaning more into this therapist friend topic, Veronica, would you like to kind of discuss what the therapist friend role is in real life what it might look like, feel like, and why some people might assume that role?
Yeah, so obviously it's not, always someone sitting down with you with a clipboard in a therapy room, but sometimes it's being the one who gets that 2 a.m. text that says, I'm spiraling. I think part of why people put us in that role can just be our personality. Like if you're a good listener, people will just automatically label you as a therapist friend.
Yeah. And the thing is, sometimes it feels amazing. Like, wow, you're the trusted friend. You're the individual that somebody is thinking, oh, they're going to be helpful. But then there are also moments where I definitely think, do I have to be the therapist in this scenario? Do I have to be the one to therapize this group chat right now?
Yeah. Do you feel like people kind of just always assume that you'll give this like deep, wise, therapist-y advice?
Yes. Don't think there are many people who would say otherwise. I've definitely been labeled even by my family as the more emotional person in the family. There tends to be, it's a lot of pressure, actually. There tends to be this idea of like, oh, Mady has the answers, or she's going to give great advice, or she's going to tell me what to do. And being the therapist friend, I now actually professionally, because it is my career, but also just prior to the title and the license, I always felt like this is a lot of pressure because you don't want to let people down. You're sought out for your quote unquote like expertise in life. But people forget, like, you're human too, right? You're going to give bad advice sometimes, or you're not going to know what the best scenario is for that situation. Yeah. Like, I'm definitely that friend who, I'm going to tell you to buy that bag, even though you told me I can't spend money. Like, that's just who I am. So sometimes I think, like, why are you reaching out to me for this advice when I'm telling you to do things? Just, again, that impulsive side just comes out.
Yeah, I think a lot of times too, that assumption alone, like you said, there's a lot of pressure in that. I think that's a big ask of people in general, but I think too, even like if we're doing this as a career, there are so many times where I just want to turn my brain off when I'm done seeing clients. Especially on those days, our longer days where we're seeing 4, 5, 6, 7, even sometimes clients back to back where, I'm coming home and I just want to brain rot. I just want to doom scroll on TikTok. I don't want to talk to anyone. But then having, obviously life happens, right? We have our people. They're going to reach out to us. They're going to vent. And I think sometimes there is that pressure to be attentive and give this wise advice to people and, just be the therapist. And I think a lot of times, like you said, it could be, it's a lot of pressure on someone.
It's so much pressure just to always have to feel, or just consistently feel like you have to be just so present. It's difficult. Sometimes just like you said, right after a long day, you just want to turn your brain off and just kind of like rot in your bed, doom scrolling, whatever it is, right? Because it is a lot of work to be that person who other individuals look into for their well-being. It is very, very difficult. So I guess this kind of leads me into just whether or not people assume or whether or not people lean into it because it feels natural. So I guess, would you say that you lean into this kind of like therapist role because it feels natural to you?
Absolutely. I mean, and this is something we'll kind of get into in a little bit, is what roles did we kind of take on early on in life to get to being the therapist friend. But I do think sometimes I do have to catch myself before I start leaning into it because it does feel natural. And luckily, my partner reminds me very often, I don't want therapy you. I want my partner. So luckily he's keeping me grounded. But it is really natural to just lean into that, especially when it comes to our own people. We kind of assume that we have this history with them. We know what's right for you. We know what's going to make you feel better. And sometimes I think there's also this idea too, like sometimes as the therapist, we do have some of the answers or like some of the suggestions, right? Mm-hmm. Where I've definitely had my clients where, I'm thinking to myself, if I were to give advice, this is what I would tell them, because your problems would be solved if you did this, if you set boundaries, if you did X, Y, Z. But that's not always the case. We are our own experts in our own lives. And that's something that I sometimes have to remind myself with, especially with the people in my life, because they really do just want to vent sometimes.
And that's so true. I mean, I even just think about our friendship, for example, like two therapists being friends. I think in a way is so ironic, but can also be even difficult. But I really appreciate the times that you just let me, like I said, spiral, or just let me just vent, because sometimes my situation doesn't necessarily have an answer or have a solution, or I really don't want that. I just want to be, emotionally comforted and supported. So I would also have to agree that I do sometimes lean into this role quite naturally. Again, just as Veronica said, I will be getting into more of the nitty-gritty of that later on. But I think roles do play a big role into whether or not you lean into this energy more. And I've definitely always been told, like I said, by my family, that I'm more of the emotional individual in the family. So I've always been seen as more of this attentive, nurturing type of person. So I would definitely say that for me, it feels very natural. And again, it's rewarding, but on the opposite end of it is also that it's hard for boundaries to be set, or it's hard for no's to be set, or, limits, because the energy does come so naturally for us.
Yeah. And I mean, being that friend, obviously, yes, it feels rewarding when you realize, you've helped someone feel seen in a moment where they thought they were completely alone. But it's definitely draining when you realize that some people maybe just love the comfort that you provide, but sometimes forget that you need it as well. And I think that the difference for me, at least, is choice, right? When I choose to show up that way for someone, it feels a lot more meaningful, and it's rewarding when my empathy creates that connection for someone. But it's really draining when my empathy is just an expectation all the time.
See, that line was so incredibly just soothing. This is the best word. It was really just like a bar. And I'm just going to say that one more time. So when your empathy becomes an expectation, it becomes draining.
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree more. That's where the burnout hits. That's where the compassion fatigue hits. Those are like fancy words for just saying that you're drained from being nice and for being available to people, because I think it does become an expectation. You do become the person who everybody knows, oh, this person is always going to be there, or they're always going to hear me out. And although some people might not notice, right, I don't believe that it's always malicious, or, I do believe that some people who go to a certain individual more and more or religiously aren't always doing it consciously, but it becomes very draining. It really does.
Yeah. And I think I want to add too, like for those people who have their person, and I think this happens a lot in friendships specifically. I mean, even like romantic relationships too, but I kind of think of like friend groups, right? There's like that one person that everyone goes to. And that's because it's a comfort, right? It's knowing, okay, I have this person to lean back on. I know that this person can give themselves a whole lot. You're giving and giving and giving, but you're also just, if you're on that other side, you're not taking, right? You're providing that comfort for everyone else. And where is your own comfort? Are you comforting yourself? Are the other people comforting you? It's a lot of times it could be a hard place to be.
Definitely. And I think on that too, I think about when are the times that it feels rewarding and when are the times that it feels draining. I mean, we've kind of spoken about it, but I wonder if you would like to say a little bit more about a specific situation that you can think of where it felt rewarding and other times where it feels maybe more draining.
I would say for me, I mean, I can even just think about with you, right? I've had so many times you come to me with a situation that's going on and you always approach it so gently. You'll be like, hey, are you busy? Do you have the mental bandwidth? Are you able to be this person for me right now? And that feels incredibly rewarding. Like there's that give and take in our friendship. Mm-hmm. And on the other side of things, it's super draining. I unfortunately have individuals in my life that are very draining, where their life is crisis after crisis after crisis. And if you're that person that, they're coming to, it's a lot. So I do think it's kind of like that choice that I was alluding to earlier, but also maybe that like recognition from the other person of like, hey, I really appreciate you for doing this for me.
Definitely. I would say that I have, like you, individuals who it feels more draining than it feels rewarding. I'd say a lot of the times it unfortunately is like parents, especially as first generation women. Like you said, it becomes this expectation of you've gone so far in life already at your young age. So it's almost like they just ask and ask and ask, right? And there's never, how are you? Or how are things going? Or it's really just kind of like that one-sided relationship. But other times when it has felt rewarding, I would say, is very much similar to what you said, that having you or having my childhood best friends come to me and let me know kind of what's going on or what's been bothering them and be able to give some kind of support, some kind of, dare I say, solution to the situation, and being able to get you guys through that is really rewarding, because I know those friendships or those relationships are reciprocal. They're not just one-sided. And in that case, like you said, you make the choice of where you're going to put your energy. And I think that those are the times that it feels most rewarding to me. And of course, being in our field and working with our clients, I would say that, at times that's draining too. Don't get me wrong. Not every client is as open or willing to be there, but it definitely is rewarding in that aspect as well.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference. But I think obviously we've also had moments where we couldn't show up for the people that we really wanted to, whether that's our clients or loved ones. What do you feel like you've gained from that?
I gotta say that the word that comes to my head is humbling. I think that I've gained patience, I've gained respect, and a sense of groundedness, because there are so many times where I've been sitting across from a client in the therapy room and there is nothing I can necessarily do to fix, quote unquote, fix or effectively deal with the situation. It's just, I think about grief, for example. Grief is such a humbling experience because there's so much pain behind grief and you can't necessarily do anything, because the only thing that would take that pain away is to have that individual here. And of course, that's not a possibility. So you really just have to sit with the feelings. And many people don't like to do that.
Yeah.
Many people are afraid of feeling their feelings. So being a therapist, and kind of like we've alluded to these roles, being such a caretaker, it really would hurt to see these people in so much pain for me not to have an answer or not to have a solution or not to have like the protocol for how to make the pain go away. But that's what I mean when I say humbling experience, that you just learn that you don't always have to have the solution. Sometimes it really is just about hearing people out. Sometimes it really is just about being seen and being validated. So I would have to say that even when you can't show up for people, you really are showing up for them.
Yeah, I think humbling is a great word that you used right there. And honestly, I think for me, our first job in community mental health really humbled me in that sense.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, that was, for me, my first role professionally in the mental health field. I know you have had outside experience, but for me, I really went in thinking that, these people are going to be coming in, they're going to have all the support that they can get, etc. That is unfortunately not the case in community mental health. And it was incredibly humbling to kind of see. Obviously, we talk about societal barriers, right? That was the most, I think, frustrating piece of it for me, was there are so many societal barriers set up in the community mental health field where for me, I wanted so badly to show up for these people. And there were just things that were either in the way, whether it was structurally or just based on the history in their life, anything. There was a lot of things kind of getting in the way to provide help, to provide a healing space for people. And it was really humbling. But I think too, kind of what you had said is this notion of fixing or healing people or saving people. And I think honestly, society has kind of misconstrued what therapy is. Yeah. I think in the media or in society, there's this idea of okay, there's something wrong with me. I'm going to go see a therapist and they're going to fix me. That's not happening. We're not fixing anything. So I think too, even if we have listeners that are therapy curious, or maybe they're in therapy as well, and they're feeling this way, why isn't my therapist fixing me? That's not what we're doing. We're here to guide you. We're here to guide our clients. We're giving you the tools that you need. We're processing what you've gone through. We're exploring. So yeah, I think there's definitely also kind of that pressure to save, to fix, to heal. And that was really humbling for me as well, just professionally.
Right. And that's where I think that the piece of humble comes in, that alongside your client, because definitely clients are going to get upset because they have that misconstrued notion of my therapist is supposed to fix me. So for future therapists who are going into this field, expect that some of your clients might be upset, or some of them might get a little frustrated with how slow things are working or how slow things are progressing. But the humbleness aspect of it comes because you also, as the therapist, have to realize like, oh, this part of me, that's really what it is. It's a hero part. It's a saving part. And that part comes in when I can't do anything for this individual. So you have to, and we get more into this later on, but you almost have to keep checking in with yourself about, is this really about the client, or is this really about the friend or the family member, or is this something really deeper about me? So I think since we've kind of been alluding to this idea of like roles and specifically the therapist role, I thought we could dive into what some other roles people might take. Maybe those patterns start, where they start.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of those patterns really do start early on. I mean, even if we think about just our family systems, right? We all play a role in our families, whether we're the caretaker, the peacekeeper, the scapegoat, the one who makes people laugh. And these roles get reinforced over and over, and they stick with us into adulthood. Same thing with attachment. If you grew up learning that you had to earn love or approval, you might find yourself people-pleasing, whether that's in friendships or relationships, and that's because it feels safe and familiar. And sometimes you don't even realize that you're doing it until you step back and you ask, wait, am I supporting this person because I want to, or is it because I feel like I have to? And I mean, it's basically, I think, why half of us become the therapist friend or even actual therapists in our case.
Right.
Especially in the first place as well. Like, we've probably just been training for it since childhood without realizing it. Being that person, being that support, that person that's going to come and vent to you. And I know for me, it was reinforced, and you kind of get into that in a little bit, but it's a lot of this feels safe, this feels familiar, and so I'm going to go towards this.
Yeah. And that last bit that you said, which is both funny, but so, so true, that we've been training for it since childhood without even realizing it. When I look back at it now, I think I definitely see those patterns again as a first generation. Those of you who are Latino or Latina, you understand. Even just as a Polish woman, I know that the culture is very similar. So there's a lot of that, a lot of expectations to be a caretaker, to be a nurturer, especially as a woman, right?
Yeah.
But a very specific role that I wanted to get into very briefly for me, because it was one that really used to trigger me. And I had to do a lot of work around it because I really couldn't understand why it was so triggering. But I have a group of friends who are my best friends from early childhood. Shout out to the baddies. They would always call me the mom of the group. And some of my partner's friends also call me like the mom of the group. And I really think that role, or kind of like being given the mom of the group, was because I'm always the individual who's, getting all the girls ready. So I'm doing somebody's nails, I'm doing someone's makeup, I'm doing someone's hair, I'm making sure that everybody has their medication, I'm making sure that everybody has like the perfect angles for the perfect pictures so that they can post them online later on after we've had a good time. And I would always think in those moments, like, I wouldn't even think about doing it. It would just like, it was almost like my body would just do it. And when I would sit by myself, I would think, wait, that would be really sweet if somebody just like did my hair or did my makeup or wanted to take pictures of me, even though I hate pictures. But just the aspect of somebody else wanting to take care of me the same way that I do. But that's when I realized that most likely that's why it was so triggering, because for me, it's like my body was almost like just making me do it. And it's just something so natural to me that for other people, it doesn't come as naturally. And I think that I had to do a lot of work into reframing that as like, okay, this is just my nurturing part. This is my caretaker role. I am a little bit better about when I let her come out, because I do think that she gets triggered very easily. But I will say that definitely that pattern stems from being brought up in an immigrant household, the cultural and gender expectations, and really the idea of conditional love equaling acceptance or worth. And by that, I just mean that from a very young age, I had those two really kind of like intertwined. So by that, I remember if I would do some kind of service of act for my parents, that's when I would get recognition. Like if I clean my mom's room, I noticed that she would shower me with affection. Oh, you're such a great daughter. I love you. Thank you so much. You've made my day by doing this. And I just remember feeling like, wow, this is so nice to feel this love and this acceptance. And it's almost like this nurturing part comes out as a way of kind of proving myself. Like, look at me. Like, look at what I can do. Like, I need to be here. Like, this is how I'm worthy to you. So sorry that I got a little bit deep there, but I think that's really where these patterns come from.
Don't apologize. We love the deeps. We're therapists. But I think you kind of bring up a good point of we kind of like do things for others what we want done for ourselves, right? And it kind of almost makes me think about it attention seeking in a sense. This is a way that we get attention and we know that it works, right? Because we've been conditioned since we were young that you do something nice, you get praise or you get attention. So it kind of makes me wonder, is this attention seeking almost in a sense? And I think sometimes attention seeking sounds like a bad thing, but I think it kind of just shows that there are some needs that aren't being met.
Right.
And we're almost doing whatever it takes to get those needs met. Sometimes, especially with people pleasing, it's usually at a detriment to our own selves. We're going to take care of everyone else. We're not going to take care of ourselves, but we're also wondering who's taking care of me. And then we're also not taking care of ourselves either. Right. It's a weird cycle.
Yeah. Like you said, a very weird, a very distorted cycle. But I think there's a lot to be said about that attention seeking, because you're right. I think it does have such a negative connotation to it. But I almost, when you said it just now, I almost had the thought of like validation seeking pop up as that being more of what I think it might be for a lot of people.
Sure.
That it's just, I want that validation because in one way or another, I did not receive that validation somewhere along the line. Right. So I do think that, even that in itself is a whole episode in itself. There's so much to be said about that. But if we can just reframe that and just say like, yes, it's essentially validation. Like, I want your validation, because I know I would feel some type of way if somebody said you're just attention seeking, but
it doesn't sound great.
No, it doesn't. But I can see it, right? Like, yes, because it's not necessarily that I want anybody to say like, oh, maybe you're such a detailed person, you're so sentimental. I want people to feel special because, like you said, right? It's almost like you give other people what you've never received, and don't think that's a coincidence. There's a reason you're doing that. You want to have somebody feel what you haven't felt because you know what it's like to not have felt that.
Yeah.
It's not like I want people to give me the praise, but it's almost like it's really just, I want to be seen, this validation. So I think maybe the validation seeking sounds a little bit better than
let's reframe.
than saying attention seeking, because I think that gets a lot of bad rep.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, similarly for me as well, being first gen, also eldest daughter syndrome over here, right? I think on top of that too, I'm eldest granddaughter, eldest niece, etc. And I think that kind of comes with more responsibility, that, understanding that like, this person is going to take care of everything. And I think especially for me, I also have gender expectations coming up as well. I have a younger brother, and I always think of like when I was younger, I was very sassy. I was very opinionated. And I would remember like my mom or my dad would be like, it's time to clean. It's the weekend. It's time to clean. And it would just be me. And I would try to get them to get my brother to clean. And I would always be faced with like, no, this is, you're a girl. This is what you do. He gets to play video games. Yeah, right. Must be nice.
Right.
No shade towards our parents. But it's those gender expectations, right? And a lot of times they are cultural. My mom grew up the same way. But yeah, I think especially too for me with my relationship with my mom, I had a pretty complex relationship with my dad growing up. He was super present. And I felt like I was almost trying to prove like I was enough for his acceptance or attention and whatnot. And my mom she was always my rock, and I was often hers too. And because of my dad not really being present, it felt good to be that person for her. So it was almost in a sense of like, I know the love that I get from you, and I want to give you that love back. So that was kind of like, it was reciprocal, but it was also like conditioning in a sense too.
Definitely. I think there's a lot that you learn with your relationships, especially early in childhood. There's so much of the dynamics that we don't notice that leave such lasting imprints in us. But I think also not necessarily that it's always a bad thing, right? Or not necessarily that it isn't something that you can't heal as you get older, but it is just a matter of acknowledging and paying attention to yourself and your needs and your wants. So that kind of like really brings us into the aspect of the line between holding space and when it becomes you being a dumping ground, essentially. So I think maybe we can really talk about that for a second, because for one, we are therapists as a profession. We discussed just being the therapist friend as well, and just all these other roles that we've taken on naturally within our household. So where is the line? What does that line look like? And what does it feel like to be a dumpy ground?
I think for some people that line can be a really thin line, the more roles that you've taken on in your life. I think for other people, boundaries come really easy to them. They're able to, I don't know, say like, I can't do this right now. When we have that caretaker role in us, it feels almost like guilty for saying that. We feel bad. We don't want to do that to people. But something that I kind of like to ask myself is, am I being present or am I rescuing? And if my perceived purpose from my personal experience in that communication or conflict, that's usually my sign that I need a pause. Because a lot of times people don't need rescuing. And we alluded to this earlier, is that rescuing isn't happening anyways. And Mady had said it's usually that's our part coming up, right? That rescuer, that the hero aspect.
Yeah. And again, that question, that I really like that, the way that you said that, of just, am I rescuing or am I just really trying to be present with this individual? Because a lot of the times, at least for me, I can speak personally, it's wanting to rescue. So it becomes difficult. Just like you said, that line for me is so, so thin. I'm sure that it's the same way for you.
Absolutely.
It's like a tightrope, really, of like, where is it too much? Where is it too little? I'm still trying to find a good resting place to really be meeting myself, but also meeting the needs of other people. But some of the things that I really think to myself or ask myself is, and you all might be able to utilize this to kind of see where that line is for you, but is really just thinking about what the relationship is. Is it double-sided, meaning that it's reciprocal, so that when you, similar to, me and Veronica's, where we can meet each other and be each other's rock and support? Or is it really just that one-sided, you're giving and they're just taking? It's really thinking about the quality of the relationship as well, which kind of goes into that. And really asking yourself whether you're sacrificing your own needs and wants for other people, and just regularly checking in with yourself, which kind of blends into how you stated it, right? Of just asking yourself, like, what's the purpose of me being there for this individual? Am I doing this for the purpose of fulfilling a role, fulfilling an expectation, or am I doing this because I sincerely want to be present with this individual? And it is just about being present and not about being the therapist friend or being the hero or the fixer. It's all of those things.
Yeah. And I think too, kind of what comes to mind is this idea of like holding space for someone. And I remember a few months ago, I think there was like a meme from like Wicked or something. Someone had said like, we're holding space.
Yeah.
And people were like, what the hell does that mean? What is holding space for someone? And it really is just being there for them without having to provide more of like those deep philosophical conversations or providing services for people. It's being able,
like interventions.
Yeah. It's being able to sit there with someone. And sometimes that will look like a deep conversation of their crisis. And sometimes it'll look like making a drink and sitting down on the couch and watching like Love Island or something stupid just to
getting coffee and going to Marshall's and TJ Maxx.
Yeah, having a little stroll.
Yeah. I think this is funny because this literally just happened, but it speaks to what you say about holding space for another individual. One of my best friends, I went over to her house and we were supposed to hang out. And we did hang out, don't get me wrong, it was a good time. But she had been going through some rough times. And so she used that time. I don't know if it was just my presence or something, my energy, I don't know. But she just got into this like cleaning kick. And so she was cleaning up her place as I was just sitting there. We were having great conversations, some really good, actually deep kind of conversations as she was cleaning. And I just remember after the time went on and I had to leave, it's just like, wait, we really didn't do much, but so much got done. Mm-hmm. Again, that holding of space where it really was just being there for her and her being there for me. And it wasn't necessarily anything too deep that we were talking about, but just that was what we needed, meeting each other where we needed.
Yeah. And both count as healing, right? If we're sitting down and having a heart to heart, or if we're gonna go out and grab a drink and just get our mind off of things, both count as healing and both count as being a good friend.
A great friend. Yeah. So really, if you take anything from today, I really do think that it's that we don't have all the answers and that you also don't have all the answers. Sometimes the best thing that we can do or the best thing that we can offer is just showing up authentically and genuinely, which is why, those are two things that I really adhere to and that Veronica really adheres to, because that's sometimes the best thing that we can offer.
And if you've ever wondered, again, whether you're the therapist friend, surprised, you probably are, but that also means that you deserve people who show up for you too.
Exactly. Whether that's just two yappers here. That's what we're really all about here, sharing the real, the funny, and the healing side of being human.
Well, we will go ahead and wrap up for today. But until next time, be gentle with yourself and with your people. We'll yap with you next week. Thanks for hanging out with us today. If something resonated with you, send this episode to a friend or leave us a review. It helps us more than you know.
Please follow us on Spotify or anywhere you get your podcasts, and follow Licensed to Yap on Instagram at Licensed to Yap Pod.